Hello and welcome to episode 68 of the Wisdom from the Akashic Podcast. My name is Suzie. I am an Akashic Records teacher and practitioner. And before I get into today's topic, I just wanted to give a quick reminder to the Akashic Abundance class is going to be starting on the 3rd of June. It's going to be 3 sessions held online. And of course, recordings of that one will be available if you're unable to attend live. I will pop a link in the show notes to the Akashic Abundance class episode that I did, so you can get more details on that one, and also a link to book. I would love to see you all there. I decided this week to do an episode on spiritual sovereignty, as I mentioned it in the last episode, and I think this is an important topic, one for you to understand me and where my perspectives come from, and also to feel into how important this is for you as an individual as well. So sovereignty is one of my highest values. Whenever I have done a review of my own values and my value system, which of course change over time with age, different life circumstances, sovereignty is always one of my highest values. And this is the idea that each person has the power to make their own decisions and to have authenticity in their life. It means that we have to take radical self-responsibility in our daily life. And radical self-responsibility is something that comes up a lot in the Akashic Records. I've done another episode on that, which I'll link into the show notes. But this idea of sovereignty is this: I'm going to take responsibility for everything, and I'm not going to allow anybody to have any power over me. Now, of course, you can argue, okay, but there are institutions and systems and all of the rest of it that do to a certain degree have power over you depending upon where you're living. And I get that. But this idea of sovereignty being important to me personally is that I get to choose. I probably was never a very good employee because of the fact, not because I couldn't do my job, but because I didn't like having someone above me telling me what to do. I was perfectly capable. If you gave me a list and said, right, these are the things to do, I could do that and I would do it to my best of my ability. I didn't need to be micromanaged. I didn't need to have someone watching over me to make sure that I'm doing it their way. So this is the idea of sovereignty. Okay. Now, where this comes in from a spiritual perspective is this idea of spiritual sovereignty. And spiritual sovereignty is taking radical self-responsibility so that I have the power and I have the ability to make my own decisions for your spiritual path and your spiritual development. It requires a deep understanding that everything you need is within you and committing to knowing thyself. That doesn't mean that you can't learn from teachers or people who you look up to or anything like that. As you know, I'm all for that. But ultimately, you doing the development, you knowing thyself is the most important thing when spiritual sovereignty is high on your list of values. All of the services that I offer, so the trainings, the workshops within the membership, the individual classes, they're all designed at helping you to work towards true spiritual sovereignty. So learning how to go into Akashic Records, learning how to deepen your own Akashic Records practice, learning how to work with this internal technology. So not only is it one of my highest values, but it's also an intention behind all of the work that I do, the podcasts, the content that I put out. It's to help you remember. It's to help you activate things within you and really move to a place of spiritual sovereignty. Firstly, knowing thyself, so really getting a clear understanding of who you are as an individual in this lifetime, and also loving thyself. So not only just understanding, but loving ourselves. And that can be really difficult. It's a lifetime's work, okay, to really truly understand yourself and love yourself, especially as we do change and grow and evolve over time. But that is what spiritual sovereignty is all about. It's essentially being and loving yourself exactly as you are. It's this idea of true authenticity, not changing yourself to suit a situation, not losing your priorities when you're in a relationship, okay? It's true authenticity, saying no when you mean no, saying yes when you mean yes. And I'm sure some of you are sitting there and you're going, oh, this is a little bit uncomfortable. I know there's certain aspects of my life where I'm not being truly authentic, and that's completely okay. This is the human experience. There's no rush, there's no judgment. But spiritual sovereignty is about working towards that as a goal. And what I want to share with you today are steps to help you work towards your spiritual sovereignty, to give you a little bit of a roadmap so that if you do listen to this and think, actually, that's really one of my highest values, you might be able to use some of these tips to help you move towards a place where you feel spiritually sovereign. Step number 1 towards spiritual sovereignty is committing to and taking radical self-responsibility and understanding that you are responsible for your own thoughts, actions, and deeds, and only these. You are not responsible for anyone else's thoughts, actions, and deeds, but you are responsible for your own. Just that commitment to, I'm responsible for my thoughts, actions, and deeds is going to help you get really focused in your life and say, right, okay, how am I showing up every day? How am I showing up in my relationships? How am I showing up to my clients? That's what you're responsible for. You can't control anybody's reaction to you. You can't control anyone's emotions towards you, but you can look at and understand your own. Step number 2 is look at how much you lie throughout your day and understand why you're doing it. Spiritual sovereignty requires a lot of self-observation and self-reflection. Okay, I'm going to say that right now because lots of these things are going to require you to do that type of work. And I know when we covered the throat chakra in the membership and we were talking about lying and how much it impacts and causes energetic stagnation in the throat chakra, we had a really good discussion about lying and what it means to lie and the situations that we might have in our lifetime where we feel like, a lie is necessary, a little white lie, I think we would call them. But we have to understand that lying is essentially anything that's going against our truth. So I'll give you an example that I gave in that throat chakra workshop that we did in the membership. And at the time I was teaching my daughter how to drive. Thankfully now she has passed her test, so I no longer have to be the passenger. But at the time I was teaching her how to drive. Now, my daughter is very aware of the fact that I have no desire whatsoever to be a passenger in the car while she's learning how to drive. So when she would ask me, do you want to take me out driving? I would say no, but I'm happy to do so. Okay, I didn't want to. If I'd a list of 20 things I could do that day, that would not be on that list. But I was happy to do so in respect of the fact that I'm her mother and I wanted to help her get to the point where she passed her driving test. So that's just a silly little example, but it hopefully helps you understand that we have to be responsible for our conduct, for our speech, for our actions, and operate from a place that's in alignment to ourselves. Number 3 is paying attention to where you're giving your power away. This is where boundary work becomes really important, and understanding that sometimes there will be aspects of past life stuff, ancestral stuff coming into play here, but knowing where you're giving your power away, where you're allowing other people to dictate what you do, control you, make decisions for you is very important. Now, of course, I am someone who gives Akashic Records readings. So you may say, well, isn't that somebody giving their power away to you, getting a reading from you? And it's not, because the purpose behind a reading from the Akashic Records is to give you guidance. If you are going to a reading and you are wanting a list of instructions or a step-by-step map of what's going to happen and how it's going to happen, then you're giving your power away to the reader. If, however, you are coming to a reading and you are wanting to get that guidance, so you're wanting a different perspective, a bigger picture, more objective soul-level perspective, then that's not giving your power away, it's seeking outside assistance. And there's nothing wrong with that. But if you find yourself constantly looking externally for validation, if you find yourself constantly going to reading after reading, learning about all of your different charts and all of that, and not taking some time just to be with yourself and understand yourself, then you need to look at if you're giving your power away. Similarly, in relationships, which relationships are uplifting, supportive, and help you feel empowered, and which relationships are asking you to compromise on your values, which are taking more of your time than you feel comfortable in giving. Tip number 4 is paying attention to when and how you're overriding your intuition. So your intuition is part of your internal technology, and that internal technology tells you when something is in alignment and when something is out of alignment. It's a way that your soul communicates with you throughout your daily life. Okay. And we all override our intuition at certain points. We'll have that gut feeling, we'll have that nudge, we'll have a, maybe I shouldn't go that way, and we override it. Now, if you're looking to really connect to spiritual sovereignty, your intuition has to be a priority, and your development of your relationship with your internal technology has to become a priority. So when you get those intuitive nudges, it's important that you actually act upon them. They may not make sense to your rational brain. Your ego may come in and make you question things and say, this doesn't make any sense. And that is completely normal. However, if you want to start strengthening that relationship that you have and embodying more of your soul, which is what you're here to do, you have to start paying attention to those intuitive hits and taking the action upon them. Number 5 is ask yourself, where do I compromise my authenticity? This comes up a lot with people in my mentorship program when they are launching their own business and they're maybe putting themselves out there on social media for the first time, and they have this idea that you have to be a certain way for this platform or that platform. Now, I understand where this idea comes from. If you're consuming a lot of certain types of content, you're going to think that you have to do the same. Okay. But again, if spiritual sovereignty is important to you, authenticity needs to be important to you. And that's whether you're showing up in your business, in your personal relationships, in your interactions with people on the street. Authenticity is key. So it's that knowing thyself, knowing strengths and weaknesses, being okay with both the strengths and weaknesses, and showing up authentically. Number 6 is ask yourself, do you know who you are? A lot of the time, we have this idea of who we are, and that idea might be based on who you were 5 years ago. It might be based on who you think other people think you are. So this can look like getting really clear on what are your values, your wants, your needs, and then looking at the question, do I actually live in alignment to these values, wants, and needs? And then it's about being really honest and knowing that these are going to change over time. This is not about self-judgment. This is not about looking at ourselves and going, oh my God, I can't believe that that's a want of mine at the moment, or that's a need of mine at the moment. It's just about being really honest with yourself as to where you are right now, and then making an action plan if there's something there that you want to change or something you want to achieve, that you're going to take the steps forward into doing so. Number 7 is, do I practice and prioritise self-nourishment? And I'm using self-nourishment specifically there as opposed to self-care. And I want to just quickly explain my working definition of both of these things. So self-care is important. Okay, self-care is the boundary work that we talked about, the making sure that you're getting enough sleep, enough hydration, enough time with friends. This is important. And please don't think that by me using self-nourishment, I'm dismissing that at all. I'm not. But self-nourishment is a little bit different. And this is a term that has been coming up a lot this year in the Akashic Records. And my understanding of this self-nourishment is this idea of taking really good care of yourself, so practicing self-care, but also doing things that nourish you. So things that help you get into creative energy, things that really help you to move into alignment with yourself. And these things sometimes can be a little bit uncomfortable. They may be that you don't particularly want to do them, but they are ultimately good for you. So I'll give you an example. One of the things that my self needs for nourishment is physical movement. I get very, very ungrounded, not well energized if I have to sit behind a computer all day. And sometimes I don't particularly want to go out and move my body, exercise, especially in the winter. Thankfully, I have a dog, so I don't really get much choice in the matter. But there are times where I don't really want to, but I know ultimately it's for my highest good, and it's to help me keep in alignment, help keep my channel open. I know that if I'm not moving my body at least twice a day, that the channels are not going to be as clear as they need to be, and I'm not going to be able to be of service to the level that I want to be of service. So that's just a little idea of self-nourishment. So have a look at, first of all, am I looking after myself? Okay, and if I'm not, I'm going to make a priority to do so. But secondly, what are the things that I know when I do them, I feel so much better that perhaps I'm procrastinating, not doing, making excuses why I don't have time for? Maybe it's taking on learning a new language, or learning how to play a musical instrument, or going to an art class, whatever it is, something that you know will be nourishing, but that you're putting off. So am I practicing self-nourishment? Because self-nourishment is going to help you keep in alignment to this spiritual sovereignty. Number 8 is when stuff comes up for you, when you are perhaps uncomfortable, when you are angry, when you're scared, are you dealing with it or are you trying to avoid it? The reason this is important when it comes to this idea of spiritual sovereignty is anything you repress is going to clog the channels. Now, you're going to always have experiences which stimulate a reaction in you. It's life, and that's how life is. But it's about saying, right, okay, anger is arising within me. How am I going to deal with it? How am I going to move that anger through my body? How am I going to transmute it? Same with fear. Why am I fearful? What's going on here? I did pre-warn you, this is going to require a lot of self-observation and self-reflection, but I promise that the more that you deal with things as and when they arise, or as close to as and when they arise, it's going to help keep you open and keep the lines of communication with your soul open. Number 9 is really, really important, and it's practice self-forgiveness. I see so many people who are so hard on themselves, so judgmental of themselves, so critical of themselves. And oftentimes they're the most loving towards other people. They'll forgive other people, no problem. They will make allowances for other people. They'll try to understand why people did certain things at certain times to them, but they don't show themselves the same grace and compassion. Now, if you're holding some form of resentment to yourself, whether that's to your inner child, to your inner teen, to the part of you that gets really angry as and when something happens, this is going to go against you in respect of your spiritual sovereignty, because you have to love all parts of you, even the parts that are wounded, even the parts that are maybe still have a little bit of work to do. That's okay. But practicing self-forgiveness is very, very important. So when you see yourself being really harsh, really judgmental, criticizing yourself, I'm not good enough, do practice self-forgiveness so that you're not taking that noise on and you're moving to a place of knowing yourself. So acknowledging that that part of you exists and loving yourself. So that part of me exists and I love it. Or I did that and it's okay because I know that I did that at a time where that was the response that I had with the knowledge that I had, with the information I had. I was doing the best at the time that I could. If that situation was to arise now, would I handle it differently? Definitely. And that's okay too. But it's about going, okay, I'm going to forgive myself for that and not moving forward with guilt and shame. They're just such unhelpful emotions. Number 10 is being really honest with yourself. Again, told you it's going to be lots of self-reflection and self-observation, but being really honest with yourself about your spiritual practices. So are you using them to enhance this idea of sovereignty, which involves being completely involved in your life and using life as the teacher, as we've talked about before on the podcast? Or are you using them to bypass, to avoid being in life, to avoid having the human experience? Okay. So I'm not saying don't have boundaries. Boundaries are important, but there's a difference between having boundaries and still operating in your life to I'm just going to cut myself off from everything because I have decided that everything is so low vibrational, I don't want to be around it. Or I am going to spend 8 hours a day meditating and I'm going to ignore all of my real life responsibilities. We always want to achieve a balance. And if you find yourself using any of your spiritual practices for avoidance of feeling certain things that are coming up or avoidance of life itself, this is taking you away from spiritual sovereignty. Number 11 is make a commitment to that connection to your soul and to the development and enhancement of your internal technology. I'm going to be talking about this a lot this year. It's going to be the focus of the membership for the remainder of the year. Every membership workshop every month is going to be taking a different look at a theme that's connected to this development enhancement of our internal technology. So if you want to join up for that, I'll put a link in the show notes. But you need to make a commitment to that. Now, it's completely normal that you're going to go through cycles with this. There's going to be times where you're very committed and devoted to your practice and connecting to your soul, connecting to your intuition. And there are going to be other times where that's not as appropriate. And that's okay. I'm not saying that this has to be an everyday, disciplined, structured thing. But the commitment has to be there to I'm not going to outsource everything. I'm not going to look outside of myself all of the time for all of these answers. I'm going to spend some time in that neutral energy, connecting to myself, connecting to that intuition and strengthening that. This is really going to enhance your spiritual sovereignty. The last tip I have for you is to empower yourself with knowledge, but focus on your practice. Now, there is absolutely nothing wrong with reading different spiritual books or watching YouTube videos or listening to podcasts. You're doing so now. Okay, there's nothing wrong with that. Empower yourself with knowledge, get different perspectives, different opinions, learn about different systems. I'm an absolute sucker for books. If you could see my house right now, there are literally hundreds of books. I love to read. However, nothing is going to enhance your spiritual sovereignty more than your practice. There is no book, there is no YouTube video that you're going to come across that is going to do more for you than your own practice. Whatever that practice is that is going to help you connect to your soul, that's what you need to practice. So yes, please do go research, look into things, absolutely. But if you do so at the expense of your practice, you're going to stagnate. So again, make sure there's a balance. I hope that you have found this episode helpful. One last thing I want to just kind of leave as a parting thought is when you're truly authentic, when you're really working on being authentic, you're not going to be liked by everybody or accepted by everybody. And that's okay. You're not supposed to be. I'm not liked or accepted by everybody, and that's okay. On the journey to spiritual sovereignty, people are going to fall away who liked the compliant, people-pleasing version of you. But one of the highest gifts that you can give yourself is spiritual sovereignty and a commitment to embodying more and more of your soul, your light, more of that into your human incarnation. So I know it can be hard when you really commit to this process and you start to see people who maybe you were friends with before moving away, but please know that when you know yourself and love yourself, you'll see that those people falling away is actually for your highest good, and that's okay. And they're making space for people who are aligned and who do appreciate you authentically you. It makes space for them to come in. I hope you've enjoyed this episode, and I look forward to seeing you next week for the next episode.